You think this is funny? Ryan's voice boomed across the restaurant, loud enough to make the birthday balloons tremble. The entire table froze. The laughter died in their throats as he pushed back his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with a kind of anger none of them had ever seen. His friends, men he'd known since high school, looked at each other, suddenly unsure, suddenly small. At the far end of the table sat Emily, the woman they'd tricked him into meeting. She stared at her water glass, cheeks trembling, wishing she could disappear. Her face was red, her eyes misted, her hands clenched in her lap, as if she expected another blow. She hadn't asked for any of this. She had only walked in because someone told her a man wanted to meet her for dinner. A kind man. A single dad. She hadn't known she was the punchline. Be part of the movement. Subscribe to Broken Chains. Turn on notifications and share these stories to help amplify voices that deserve to be heard. Your support can spark awareness, inspire compassion, and push the world one step closer to justice. Ryan stepped closer to her, his chest still heaving. Did you think setting me up with someone overweight would be a joke? He asked, turning toward his so-called friends. No one answered. The neon restaurant lights flickered across their guilty faces. One of them, Kyle, cleared his throat. Dude, come on. It was just, say it, Ryan snapped. A joke? A prank? Something to record and upload. Kyle's smirk died. Emily lifted her head a little, her voice barely a whisper. It's okay, she said, even though it wasn't. Her chin quivered as she tried to smile through it. I can just go. She reached for her purse, but Ryan gently placed a hand on the back of her chair, not stopping her, just grounding her, letting her know she wasn't alone. No, he said softly, the anger melting into something steadier. You're not the one who should leave. Then he turned back to his friends, the people he'd led around his son, the men he'd trusted with years of memories. I want you all to hear me clearly, he said. His voice no longer shouted. It was worse, calm, cold, final. Emily is not a joke. She walked in here expecting kindness. And you humiliated her before she even sat down. Emily looked at him then, truly looked, and the shock in her eyes told Ryan that she wasn't used to being defended. The table stayed silent, forks untouched, beer glasses sweating. Ryan let out a breath, steady, controlled. After my wife left, you all told me to get back out there. To try again. To trust people. His voice cracked just slightly. And this? This is what you thought would help, Kyle muttered. Man, it wasn't that serious. It was serious enough to make a grown woman walk into a room thinking someone wanted to meet her, only to find out she was the punchline. Ryan shook his head in disgust. You know who this woman is? He didn't wait for an answer. She volunteers at the children's hospital. She works double shifts at her job. She helps her elderly neighbor do groceries every week. And you thought she wasn't good enough for me because of her body? You thought she was someone to laugh at? Emily's breath hitched. Her eyes went glassy, but not with humiliation this time. With something like disbelief. Ryan continued, his voice dropping. You want to know what I think? The men looked at him nervously. I think she's too good for any of you. And definitely too good for your jokes. Emily's hand shook as she pressed her fingers to her lips. A tear slipped free. Ryan didn't pretend not to notice. Emily, he said gently, you didn't deserve any of this. I'm sorry. Truly. She swallowed hard. You don't have to apologize for them, she whispered. No, he said. I don't. But I want to. She stared at him, surprised. She wasn't used to people apologizing for anything. Ryan then looked back to his friends, the finality in his tone unmistakable. This is the last time I let any of you treat another human being like this. And it's definitely the last time you get to call yourselves my friends. No one argued. They couldn't. He pulled out his wallet, placed enough cash on the table to cover both dinners, and then turned to Emily with a warm, genuine softness in his eyes. Would you like to get out of here? She hesitated. You don't have to do that. I know, he said, but I'd like to, if you want. Something unbroken flickered inside her. A small, cautious hope. She nodded. Ryan offered her his arm, not as pity, not as performance, but as respect. Emily took it slowly, still unsure, but touched by the sincerity she felt radiating from him. As they walked toward the exit, people in the restaurant watched with a mixture of surprise and admiration. His friends stared after them, realizing too late that the joke had never been on Emily. It had been on them, for revealing exactly who they were and losing someone who finally saw their cruelty for what it was. Outside, the evening air was cool and quiet. Emily inhaled deeply. "Thank you," she murmured. Ryan smiled gently. "For what?" "For seeing me," she said softly. "Everyone else looked right through me." He shook his head. "Not me." They stood there for a moment. Two people who came into the night expecting nothing and walked out having reclaimed something they didn't expect: dignity, respect, and the possibility of something new. "Come on," Ryan said, opening the door of his truck. "Let's start this night over." And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was part of the story, not the joke.